because, oh, we're starting. Hey, welcome everyone. Hi, my name is Twandine. I am one of your co-presenters today. Let me again show you my camera. I'll stand in. I look like a blur. I'm not this blurry. It's just the camera here at the college that I'm using in our wonderful iLaunch classroom, which is in the M building. It's where I facilitate my classes, so it just looks like a blur for me. But today, my colleague and I, who's going to introduce herself, we're going to be talking about the cognitive skills and metacognitive skills and motivation. So I'll give you a little bit about myself and then introduce my colleague. My name is Twandine. I've been here at Triton College. I'm a full-time faculty member in the College Readiness Department and also in the Math Department as well too. And my biggest advocate in my classrooms is always motivating my students not only to learn math because it is everyone's favorite subject. I laugh at it because it's my joke in the classroom. But it's also to look at the motivation of how they're here at the college, maybe for the first time or maybe for the second time or maybe infinite time, to get them to stay motivated in their learning, not only in my classroom, and there are other courses as well too, where we have colleagues that may teach the class and it's their favorite subject, but to the student it's not. So they have to find that motivation within themselves to get through the course, learn something from the course, and appreciate what we in our fields have to give to them. So without further ado, introduce my colleague Tina, who's going to introduce herself.
Hello, and not as fancy as Twan, but I am at home today. And yeah, so I am the learning specialist as part of the Title V grant. So I've been here about 1.5 years, mostly during the pandemic, so still feel very new. And I am working with the co-rec classes. So the co-requisite curriculum. I also teach English and the humanities. And I want to talk today about metacognition and how to build metacognitive activities into the classroom, and why it's important to get your students thinking about their thinking, and bringing them some self-awareness to how they operate and how their brains work. When they tune in, when they're kind of tuned into that, they're at an increased chance to better self-regulate. Not only makes them successful in college, but builds them up as lifelong learners. And we sort of see this connection between metacognitive skills, which gives them power and reassurance, and it builds this mindset that they can improve, and that can be motivating to them too. So between Twan and I, we've got a lot of great ideas for motivating students and getting them going in the right direction. So I thought I would just start with maybe a few slides on metacognition, but mostly talking and showing you some activities that I use in the way that I kind of apply them. And then I'd love to hear from you as well, to see if there's any crossovers or anything that you use in your classroom that helps to build students' metacognitive abilities.
I like it.
Let me upload this. And I can definitely forward a longer presentation to you as well.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I'm being your cheerleader with you as your co-presenter to make the time, like I would do in my class, the intermission while I'm trying to load up something.
Thank you. I love it.
In that, while Tina's loading up all of you, I try to keep them in that good spirit of learning is fun, and that their classroom learning, like in my class, it's not going to be boring. Because when you have a boring class, I'm not saying that any of us are boring, but I'm saying when you have a boring class, or if a student thinks it's boring, their mind is never going to be in tune with you. They're not going to be focused with you. They're not going to appreciate everything that we have to give and offer to them. And they're not going to be engaging in the classroom either. So their mindset is all about, when is this class over? And you want them to think, hey, what is he going to present or what is she going to present next? You ready?
Yeah, and I want to kind of add on that is that, it's not just about, being entertaining, even though Tuan is so entertaining and I love him, but also connecting it to their experiences, things that are happening in their life, and their careers and their futures. But sometimes I think for me, like when I do even when I do connect it to their career, like they tell me they're a culinary student and I try and engage them in, talking about, their future career in culinary, that might not even be enough engagement. Like sometimes you really have to just, where are they at right now in the world, and kind of try and connect that in as well. Sometimes I'll bring up, I'll try and say things like, okay, when you're having a fight, with your boyfriend or something, and everyone kind of laughs because they're like, yeah, I'm experiencing that right now. It piques their interest and they start listening. So, yeah.
You're absolutely right, because I try to find also the relevance in what we're doing in the classroom to relate to what they're doing in their lives. So Tina is right, because I usually, not the, I never say myself as entertaining, but I like learning, I like fun. But thank you. I try to find, and talking with my students about what they're doing in their lives, not so much as personal, but maybe their career goals or their exploration of goals of what they want to look at very quickly, or their professional goals, whatever the word goal that goes after it, and try to infuse that in the classroom and saying, oh, well, by the way, here's a problem that can work with that. And never thought of it that way. So yeah, define that connection, which on my part, I'm going to talk about with motivation.
Yeah. And then also, to kind of segue back into metacognition, I mean, with math, I mean, even if they're not math majors, because I know you teach math, I mean, the thinking skills that they're going to have to use and that they're building are skills, critical thinking skills that they're going to have to use across the board. So as you're kind of getting them used to learning, within the field of math, those skills are transferable. So that can, be engaging as well. Hopefully that, they don't think, well, I'm never going to learn math. I need math again, but yeah, you're going to have to think in this way again. So just, very quickly, I always say that metacognition is simply just thinking about one's thinking and reflection. So anytime that you have points in your class where you can stop and reflect, I think is a great idea to building that self-awareness for the type of reflection that students should be doing. You stop and you think, what's working? What am I doing that's working? What's not working, and how can I change it? And this is a type of higher order thinking skill. It's an offshoot of critical thinking. And through the research or the learning that I've done on metacognition, there's research that says that, it changes the structure of your brain. So looking at learning processes and cognitive abilities, by reflecting or engaging in reflective practices, you can, basically change the structure of your brain. And why is this over? Through neuroplasticity. So it's actually really cool, the way that the brain works and can change just by changing the habits of our thinking. So those are definitely lifelong skills and changes. These are just a few steps for teaching metacognition. So things that, you do kind of want to introduce it in the beginning and saying, hey, I want you to think about, and use the word, I want you to think about your metacognition and kind of give a definition to it. And then obviously like engaging the students in those reflective processes and breaking that down. So analyzing with them and kind of going over their reflection, and then addressing any issues and teaching any specific strategies that they might need in the future that they either don't have or they're not using. And then continuously then throughout the class, you're always guiding students through the use of those strategies. So, you know, you can say, instead of doing X, why don't you try doing Y, right? You're like, okay, you've tried this, now let's try something else. So you're naturally always doing that. You're always guiding students to using different strategies, thinking strategies. So here's a few activities that you could do. You could do a KWL chart. I don't know if you've used this before, but you're asking the students to reflect on what do they already know about a topic, what do they want to know about a topic, and then what they learned about the topic. So this is a part of assessing prior knowledge and connecting it back to what they've learned in the previous lesson, or maybe in a previous class, what they've learned and how it connects to what are we learning this week. Wrappers. Wrappers are ways to just have them write down the key points from the lesson, and then you can see, are the key points of the lesson they're coming up with, does that match your key points? As a way to say, you know, what are the students getting out of this, and is it what I want them to get out of it? Reflective essay questions on an exam, and I kind of want to ask Tuan if how he feels about that too, because I'll sometimes advocate for instructors to add that reflective essay question onto the end, and ask questions about, you know, how difficult did you find this test? Which parts of it were the most difficult? And you know, you can even if it's not worth any points, you know, just having that question there, I think makes the point, hey, you should be stopping and thinking about this. You know, even if they don't answer it or you get like a one-word answer, I do think it has an effect on getting the students to stop and think about how things are going in the class. Some instructors will do learning journals. Oh yeah, Tuan, do you want to talk?
Oh, I was going to say, if I may, I do reflective question essays as part of what I call in my class is called summary postings. And since we're in a remote learning environment online, each week they have to do a summary, which is a question that's being asked about what was challenging this week, what could be changed from the lesson this week, and how can it be applied to A, your next lesson, or B, your life itself.
Yeah, that's great. And that's right there then in that assignment.
It sure is. It is. It's
Yeah.
part of the your weekly, I don't want to say weekly journal, but it's part of your weekly input in this case.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know why this image is overlapping onto the words. It's not like that on my sheet. That's weird. Anyways,
yes. Hold on, Tina. Yeah. I'm just saying, could you put that in the chart? Oh, in the chat. Sorry.
The chat.
You mean my weekly question or the weekly summary that that my class has to do? It usually changes because it's really based on the week that I'm getting the students, and in the summary posting that I put in there, I just put summary posting, and then at the end of the week, I'll put in the questions that I want them to reflect on based on the week's discussion. So it's a lot of time I'm looking at or listening to my students and creating that question. They don't realize I am creating a question for them in regards to the lesson, but usually it ends with them looking at themselves and the lesson that we're talking about. Like, for example, this week we're talking about statistics and how statistics is used in the industry and as a consumer. their question that they're going to have that's posted on Sunday is to say that, you know, did you do any research on the statistics and how statistics is used in your field? Which my class, there was 7 students who gave examples. One was a police officer. One other student was she is a cashier. She talked about how statistics is used at her job. The other student in this case talked about being just a student. One other student talked about statistics and using it to look at how to buy a house, which is great. I said, that's fantastic. And the last one looked at and talked about how statistics is used for her in buying the best product. And she was talking about shampoo for her dog. So. No problem, no problem. You know, like I said to other colleagues, I'm always changing, and I'm always, yeah, I'll just use the word change. I'm always changing because I adapt to the class that I'm working with, and using what Tina's talking about, these metacognitive skills, and looking at what I'm thinking, what my students should know, but I'm also thinking what I think, what they want to know. So I'm trying to get that back and forth with them, and I think that's probably why our presentations are linked together. But I'm trying to get what they should be looking at and how they should achieve, but also looking and saying, what do I want them to achieve, and how do I want them to achieve it, when students may have their own perceptions of what they want to achieve and how they should achieve it. And you're trying to, as an instructor, and I'm sorry, I apologize, Tina. You're trying to, as an instructor, build on those things and build your classroom and build it in the sense that it helps and benefits everyone in the classroom, but even though sometimes it doesn't work, but you're trying to do that, but give them the power to maybe ask themselves in the beginning, like I ask students why they're in the classroom, rather than listening, oh, they told me I have to be here. No, you don't want to say that. Why are you in this class? There's a reason why you took this class at 7 o'clock in the evening. There's a reason why you looked at all the other instructors and say, okay, maybe I'll take this person. There's a reason why you decided to take the class online compared to being face-to-face, or in this case, remote. There's reasons why you do things. That's what I want to hear from you, and how we build the class, because the class is not based on how I, as the instructor, want you and what you should know, but it's also built on what you want from the class as well too. So your power of thinking, as Tina was talking about, is important in the class as well than my power of thinking, because what I'm thinking what you should do is not the same thing you're thinking that I should do. Let's try to find that common ground. I do apologize, Tina.
No, and one thing that you're doing, what you were kind of describing, is like you were thinking about your metacognition. You're asking some of these questions, metacognitive questions of like, am I on the right track? Is there something I can do differently? What worked well? What could I have done better? Things like questions like that. So you're doing what you want your students to be doing.
And Angela stated theory of mind.
Yeah, theory of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Angela, absolutely.
I have another activity that I could be useful for you. So here's an activity with a Venn diagram. So asking 2 students to sit down and describe how they tackled a problem. So comparing with each other the similarities and differences between how they solved the problem. And you can kind of see then, you know, there's different ways of solving problems, but then there also is some similarities to that. And then you kind of can come up with new ideas for how you can solve a problem. So it kind of creates a discussion moment between students about their thinking. I also recently did a learning assessment form. It's kind of like the midterm point. I posted that in the chat. I guess I can share my screen too. But yeah, so I just had them fill out a form, fill out almost like a little quiz with some metacognitive questions. And I told them, you know, this is a good check-in point. You always want them to reflect, like, okay, what can I do better in the next 5 weeks? But it's also really good for you too to get that feedback from students. One thing that I mentioned on there was the muddiest point. And so that's the muddiest point is a place where they feel like they're trekking through the mud. Like they're just stuck, or they're not trekking through, but like they're stuck in the mud. And they don't know how to proceed forward. And then I asked them, what's one question that you can ask that if you got the answer, it would unstick you, or it might help you get out of the mud? Because I always want them to be asking me questions instead of me throwing them a life preserver. I want them to reach out and say, can I have a rope? Can you help me through this? So I wanted them to sit and formulate a question that they could ask. Was there anyone else that had any activities that they use, or questions that they ask students? Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone, this is Kevin. I have an idea.
Awesome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just loving everything I'm hearing, and it's just so wonderful to hear such reflection going on in the classrooms. One thing that I've used with my art history students is I ask them to, and again, I teach a survey art history course, so we cover quite a lot of content in 15 weeks, from the Egyptians to, so it's a lot for students to really reflect on. But one way of building in this metacognitive awareness is I just ask them, like, if you were going to go to Europe, what were the top 3 locations you'd visit, and what pieces would you want to see? List 3 pieces, something to that nature. And that very simple question always reveals so much more than any other discussion question I could ask them or post they could make. That reveals so much about their learning, and that's just been really useful in having my students kind of reflect and think about what works for them and what hasn't worked for them in some cases.
That's awesome. I love that. It's a really cool question. Yeah, that's cool. I would like, yeah.
I do too.
Yeah. I could totally see, like, they start talking about it, and then they're like, oh, wait, I actually did learn a lot.
Exactly, because if I ask them, what did you like? I mean, all things are good, but they get so caught up in trying to repeat maybe knowledge that they're supposed to sound so knowledgeable, or they're supposed to sound like the textbook that is written in language that's so not accessible,
Yeah.
But then they really just can say it in their own way, and then they go, wow, I realized that I really knew a lot. Or I say, pretend you're the tour guide and your friends are looking at you to make the ideal itinerary for your grand European tour. Where would you take your friends and why? That works really well.
Oh, I like that.
Ooh.
That's fun. That's engaging. That's motivation.
It is.
Thanks.
I may have to tweak that a little bit.
I was just thinking that, yes. Put them in, a real world, like, location and situation. I like that. Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you for sharing.
About what you're saying, Kevin, and I've done something comparable to that, where in my math literacy class, I'd pretend, and I'd usually say this, pretend that I gave them $1,000, and I say, okay, let's just pretend. And within that $1,000, we're going to 3 different countries. Now the students have to select those countries, and I say it can't be Canada, it can't be Mexico, and it can't be the United States. It has to be abroad. Within that, it's in the lesson of talking about currency in different countries and how they have to do the conversions of that. So the students get to decide the countries they get to go to, and with the $1,000, I know in one semester, one student says, we need more than $1,000. I say, okay, so every country you get $1,000. So right now you have a total of $3,000. But all of you as the class, and at that time it was 15 students, they had to decide all together which countries they had to work on, go to, what they were going to spend it on, how they were going to spend it, and then report back to me. So I stepped outside of the classroom and gave them time to talk about it. And yeah, I'm thinking it's something like that what I was doing too. And I thought it was really cool. They didn't know they were learning conversions. Really, that's what it was. It was the unit about converting US dollars into other currencies in other countries.
That's really great.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
really cool.
am I out? Is it me? Is it time for me? Is it about
Yes,
me?
yes. Hmm. Please do. I think it's a good
Well,
segue. Mhm.
and motivating students for all of you, like I said, I'm always changing, I'm always evolving as an instructor and as an educator, and I'm trying different things all the time. And I tell my students with projects in the class, they never get the same thing that another class has before. And usually I'm sharing with my other colleagues who've never taught the class. They'll get my concepts or ideas that I've used in the class to get them started, and especially with Math 101, in this case, which is quantitative literacy in the math department. So one of the things that I've learned that I do with my students is this. Every class, for all of you, every class session, at the beginning of the class, they get a motivational saying. If it's about mathematics, last ones were about women in mathematics. This month it's about mathematics and around the world. And for the month of May, I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to use for the topic. But in January, it was all about motivation topics that dealt with mathematics, but also dealt with motivating themselves and motivating the concept of being in a dev ed class, which I hate saying those words, but being in this class and also being in a remote atmosphere where they're learning and I really don't get to see them. So in the month of February, it was Black History, but so using motivational things for that, and then also a lot of sayings. But nevertheless, one of the things I found that get students to talk maybe for the first 10 minutes is about the quotes that they'll see on your screen like you see right now. And I'll use totally different ones all the time. I never use the same ones. I'm always doing a lot of research. It's probably why I don't have a lot of time. And my students think I live and drink math, but there's other things I do. But I'm always looking for things to motivate them within the classroom, to get them psyched about the class itself. And there's things that I'm trying to do to not only get them psyched about mathematics, but also being a college student. Because being a college student is not just being in the classroom or being on campus. It's actually 24 hours a day, being on your own and thinking, hey, I need to get this completed. I have a project I need to work on, or I have an assignment that I need to get finished. Oh, I got to get ready for the quiz or test tomorrow. It's always thinking about those things that we have experienced, all of us, but some of our students who have never had that before because of being first generational students, they now have to get in that mindset of thinking that the instructor, like ourselves, are there to support them, but we're not like the high school teachers who told them every day that something needs to be completed. That's why we have to simplify. So in that, I found reasons why students are never motivated. And the motivation in this case comes from the pressures that they have, the lack of support that they have at home and at school, because sometimes they don't really see that within ourselves, the low self-esteem that they may have as well too, even the expectations that we have as instructors, but their expectations are even lower because they feel, oh, I'm in this class, I'm never going to do well because I don't really like it, and they don't see how it relates to what they do, and it really brings them down. And then what is really sad to say is that the lack of enthusiasm that we as instructors go in, because I've seen that in some reports as well too, that in motivating our students, we have to have that great motivation ourselves. And if we have lack of a motivation, our students are going to see that, and it reflects on their ability in the classroom. There's tons like the SUSY report right now that students are taking, which is until April the 18th, and I told my students, and I encouraged them to participate in it, to give us that information to say, this is what's going on, we as students here at Triton College, what you, and I say me and us as instructors, what we can go in and do better. And looking at all these different things of how they're thinking and what they should be thinking and what we can do to motivate them. And again, like I said, my presentation is a little bit longer, but we shortened it down. But I really want to emphasize connecting with our students in regards to maybe greeting them and saying hello. I mean, there's videos out there for that as well too. Learning their names is a great motivation because then the student feels connected to the classroom, and it gives them the sense that they belong as well too. Emails, positive energy. I'm always giving, I know, as Tina said, entertainer, but I just have this, I go in with this positive energy because I feel that I'm doing something great each day when I do math. I know we all feel the same way with our subjects, but for me, it's like, oh, I'm going to do a different problem with them and show them how they're going to do it. And if I show that excitement, like I tell my students, I'm not expecting you to be all Einsteins or Galileos after the end of this class, but I want you to have an excitement of learning so that when you go to your other courses, you go in with that same excitement that will help you to achieve where you want to be at. So one of the things, like I said, I was talking about, I change all the time. So I'm using now in this semester, which is called inclusive teaching practices. And within that, it talks about using diversity within your classroom, using diverse learning tools that we have. And I'm not using just like exams, which are great assessment tools, but there are other things that we can use as well too, projects. And like I said, in one presentation, I have what is called the 1, 2, 3 quiz. And that 1, 2, 3 quiz for all of you, it actually is reverse. It starts with 3 minutes. I'll talk about something and I'll say, okay, let me see what you think about what we were just talking about. Give them 3 minutes to talk about it and share their thoughts on it. Then we'll talk about something else. As the students are leading in that conversation, I'm getting ideas from them and saying, oh, they're talking about this math problem or this problem relates to this. And then I'll say, okay, it's now time for the 2-minute question. And then the last one will be the 1-minute question where they only get 1 minute to answer it. But it's my way of, in this remote learning, to get them engaged and hear from them rather than just not seeing them. And using learning activities. There's tons of different learning activities out there in our digital resource world that we can use in the classroom, and learning from our colleagues of what they're doing in the classroom, and maybe, like I said, tweak what Kevin was saying and use that. And if it doesn't work for the first time, don't give up. Try it again or change it up a little bit. Use activities that require active engagement. My class, used my Math 102 class, one of the things that we were talking about today is statistics. So my way of getting them to talk about statistics, I put a question on the screen and saying, what is statistics? And maybe 1 or 2 people will talk about it and say, you know, what it is to them. And I say, okay, fantastic. Can you give an example of what you mean statistics is to you? And it opened up the conversation a little bit, because then one other person joined in and said, well, I thought it was this. And another person would say, well, I used to think this. And one person mentioned that they did take a statistics class and failed it, but it gave them, you know, more opening to talk about what I was looking for. And recognize individual strengths and needs. Yes, all our students in this case, even ourselves, we all have our strengths, we have our goals, we have what we need. And I think it's important that we look at our students and learn what their needs are. And I don't mean their needs in the physical sense. I mean their needs maybe educational wise, and saying, oh, John is taking my class because he wants to use this in his job today. One student I have who's Nicholas, who's a police officer, and he says, oh, great, I can use what you just talked about in my job I said, great, fantastic, which now leads me to the question that they're going to get on Sunday of the summary posting that they have to do in regards to what we talked about in class. And in my class, they do get points for it as well. Understanding, sorry, typos. Understand individual needs. That's what it's supposed to say, but I'll go back and correct that. Yes, every student, their needs may be different. It's really going to be difficult for us to try to address all those needs. And, but we really need to understand it. Explore diversity issues. That's really important for my class, especially using my Math 102, because I have 23 students with 23 different ways of thinking, 23 ways of speaking, 23 ways of learning, 23 ways of looking at the world and how mathematics is used. I'm using all that in the classroom setting, and also hopefully they're learning from each other as well too. And last but not least, I love when they express themselves and saying, this helped me, this didn't help me. And in their last posting for my class, they have to post in the last one a summary of everything for the class and how it really relates to their lives. It is the biggest points they get from the summary postings, but for me, it gives me some feedback of changing the class and how the class is structured, especially in the remote, because face-to-face is a little bit different from the remote class, but designing the next class, a little bit better, or maybe more engaging, or less me talking and more them talking. But yes, motivating adult learners, and doing some research in this case as well too, and as Tina said about me being entertaining, making a connection with them, using music and humor in the classroom. I went to a presentation before pre-COVID, which was our math conference, and one of my colleagues who teaches at University of Illinois was saying in his class he uses a lot of humor because he knows that Calculus 4, which is what he was teaching, he said it's probably dry for most students. And he said they come in, they know they have to take it, but he tries to show them the humor in it as well too, to show them that it's not supposed to be that intense. You can learn from the humor, you can learn from yourself as you're laughing with yourself or about yourself. And then challenge them. Adult learners are always looking for challenges. And in those challenges, in this case, may not be just giving them the problems that we see that they need, but also relating it to things that they may do. Like Kevin was saying as well too. Avoid the obvious, which based on research is adult learners, since we're in an institution of higher learning, we know that they have lives outside the classroom. So avoid the obvious things of saying, okay, I'm not going to give you too much work, but they need some lessons, they need some practices in their skills in this case. And teach unplugged. I love this one because I actually do. And I'm not teaching in a traditional manner because I just tell my students I'm probably going to be the unorthodox teacher you've ever had for math. Because, like I said, they see a posting or they'll see a quote and they have to talk about it and say, how is this related to math? And then I build it into the conversation or the lecture, and they don't realize how that important quote is actually tied in. Like today, we were talking about square roots, and their quote had, pi is always the best root of life. They didn't realize I was tying it into the conversation. And one person pointed back to the cartoon that I had. Use their tech skills. Well, they're using it now. And always take a break from what you're doing. Sometimes you have to step back and think about, did this really work? Okay, let me step back from it and maybe try it a different way or approach it a different manner. When Tina and I were talking about our presentation, we were talking about how we, as instructors, do these things in our classroom to not only motivate our students to understand our students, but to I guess a better thought too is understanding ourselves. I think it's important that we understand ourselves as well too, and how we, as educators, and our students see us as we see them. If I could be, I'm not, I guess not wrong about that, but Tina gets back up for that. Did anyone have thoughts, questions? Like I do in my class, anyone have questions? Hamburger, broccoli, or maybe cauliflower? Oh, the silence. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I can feel the afternoon or it was almost evening. It's evening now.
I know, and I teach evening classes, so I'm always my students. I'm gonna share this with you all because I think it was funny. Yesterday, my class, no Tuesday, my Tuesday class. Tuesday class for all of you. We were playing going to the neighbor's house for math, and it was a game that I thought of on the way to work. And I said, okay, today, every time we do a problem, we're going to go to the neighbor's house. So they had to pretend like we're all going to the neighbor's house and say, hey, can you do this problem? Let me show you what I discovered. And thinking like if they're planting or maybe designing something for their house or something like that. And in the class, I use a different voice for different neighbors. And then I knocked on the table, and my students like, oh my God. I say, hold on, everyone, someone's at the door. And I said to my students, I do not want this problem, but you maybe can sell me a different problem. And they're like, Twan, don't open the door. Everyone started laughing because they thought it was someone really at the door. And I was pretending to be the next neighbor they were going to. And I think for them, they were all encouraged to say, okay, Twan, let us show how they should do the problem, as they're still laughing like I am. So they showed me on the board, which I opened up the whiteboard and they showed me how to do the problem. And I was like, oh, and then I went back to the voice. Oh, thank you. I think I prefer to buy the other problem. And he was like, no, you want to buy this one because it's more tasty. But it was to get them to demonstrate what we talked about, but it just happened that I knocked on the table, and I'm still laughing about it because I thought it was hilarious.
That's too funny.
I'm laughing as well, thinking about, I never thought about calculus being funny or math funny at all. So I'm sure that your students and having a moment to laugh, we all know that if you do laugh, it feels good for a second, and certainly math anxiety must be very real. So I think, creating a positive moment like that helps to have a positive association with something that there might be a lot of fear with. So kudos to you for the humor.
You're right, because I always tease in the beginning of the semester, when we were face to face, I would go down the hall to the classroom and stand among my students and hide my ID and pretend like I'm one of them and say, oh my God, I took this class 9 times, but I'm trying to get through it. And they're like, oh my God, how many times did you take this class? And then it'd be one person in the crowd that will say, he's the professor. So they're like, oh, that type of class. Yeah, it's not supposed to be boring. Your mindset of walking into a classroom of a subject that you really put yourself in this professionalism of saying that I hate it. You gave it power. You shouldn't do that. You should go in and thinking, what can I learn from this? Or how can I learn from this? What would the instructor show me or maybe differently that I don't know? And that's what I open up when we walk into the classroom, and it's like, oh, okay. And like I said, it's usually one student's like, he's the professor. I know. At the end of the semester, I'll put on my gown and tell them that we're now at the thrust point of you graduating from this class. I have done everything that I could do. It is now up to you. You are the goal that I was seeking for. You are the sky that I was reaching for. I've reached you all, and I hope you do well in the next course. I hope you do well in your educational pursuits. And if you're ever in need, I'm always here to be your stepping stone.
Thank you. I love that.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.